My name is Caroline Rees. I have been working with the Corporate Social Responsibility Initiative at Harvard Kennedy School, and we've been looking at the issue of tensions between companies and communities and how they resolve disputes. We decided to develop 3 films together with partners to tell stories of these kinds of dispute resolution in the words of those who are actually involved. The first was a copper mine in Peru. The second was in the Philippines and related to a hydroelectric power project. And the third is in the Niger Delta and involves an oil and gas company and communities around its installation. We have seen in our work that both companies and communities and the lawyers and non-governmental organizations that advise them have some lack of confidence in, lack of understanding of what mediation might actually be like in reality. And so we want to bring to them an understanding of how that can happen as a process, real live examples of how it has happened as a process. What's unique to these films, I think, is that it's in the voices of those who took part. The Peru film is about the Tintaya copper mine and the communities around that mine who had grievances dating back to when the mine was constructed under the government.
Yo fui nacido ahí, viví durante hasta mis 13 años.
Hay en ese terreno, en esa parcela que ahorita ya no es un tajo abierto, ahí nací yo.
En esos años nosotros pues, mayormente vivíamos acá en este lugar solamente de nuestros trabajos, del campo, de la agricultura, de la ganadería, de eso nomás. Aquí en la comunidad pues, totalmente no sabíamos nada que era el trabajo. Más o menos la gente vivía, como lo vuelvo a decir, con su chacrita, con sus animalitos, con eso nada más.
Y al cual vieron que había bastante mineral donde nosotros vivíamos, entonces ya empezaron a desalojarnos, entonces ya... Y también como nosotros éramos bien humildes, bueno, hemos salido y nos han reubicado en un lugar donde hasta nuestras cosas se perdieron, ¿no? Entonces, bueno, animales también, porque mis papás ya no les quedaba ni un pedazo de terreno, han tenido que venderlo. Y ya pues ellos también a veces hasta se dedicaron al vicio de tomar, o sea, ha sido una historia muy triste, ¿no?
The Philippines video is about the construction of a hydroelectric power project, dams and plants in Ambuclao and Binga, and the communities who were displaced by that original construction under a state-owned enterprise, and the continuing grievances they feel over 60 years of how they were treated in that process.
In 1953, my first teaching was in this community of Ambuclao.
It was a very fertile land, all rice field. It can support the whole community within the area.
This community is surrounded with wide rice lands. That is why it is called the rice granary of Bukod.
That field is where our income or livelihood derives. But because of the dam, our native rice, what we call Kintoman rice, the red one rice, it disappeared because where will we plant those rice that we owned before?
We lost our farms, we lost our rice fields.
If you are me, if you are in my shoes, I think until now you will also be crying because we do not have any means of livelihood now.
This is the area where the Ambuclao village was. This was covered, this was dumped in, the water rise in 1955.
The rice fields is submerged Under the ground, underwater.
If you see the picture, which was now submerged,
The example in the Niger Delta is about an oil and gas company present in the Niger Delta with communities that have a long history of feeling neglected by government, and in many ways projected some of that grievance into the company that was in a joint venture with the government, and brought those grievances to a climax in that relationship.
The first thing that the communities tell you is that the problem is as a result of government neglect. That this is why they are quarreling with the oil companies. So in their mindset, the oil companies become representatives of the government. They represent the only formal structure they can hold accountable for their plight.
Government in its part was not doing what it was supposed to do. That is, taking care of the welfare of the citizenry. Government was not doing it.
People expect a lot from Chevron, but then the people don't see government. The people they see is the oil companies, where, for instance, the Chevron tank with 24-hour lights, with running water and everything, but the nearest community there do not have lights, they do not have water.
Chevron government, they are the same people. Because this is Africa, this is Nigeria.
In all of the instances, the communities have a history of grievance related to the commercial operation. It wasn't necessarily today's company that was at the start of the grievance, but the grievance relates to the mine, to the power project, to the oil and gas operation, and it's distrust.
One of the old man here, that Solano, is all used to go there and complain, but they don't hear him. And that makes our anger grow and grow because they don't answer what we need. So where will we get our own food if all the mountains belong to them?
It hurts. It hurts in the sense that the families were separated after the construction of this dam.
Before, I am holding a big anger because of what happened. We are not being heard.
They blame NPC for the disruption of their lives.
They stopped talking to one another, and then eventually it got to a point where they were afraid of one another.
Tentaya Mariquiere era un desastre. Había bastante contaminación e impacto. Más que todo por el agua, ¿no? No había control como ahora está haciéndose. Los ríos corrían, parece una mazamorra, ¿no? Un desastre era.
Entonces, como nunca nos escuchó el Estado, entonces ya mayoría de las familias ya no tenían dónde pastar. Por ahí es la que empezó el conflicto.
Fuimos al Estado a hacernos escuchar, pero no era suficiente, no fue eso, no, el Estado, el peruano no entendió, no escuchado.
You know, the mindset was, you know, let's do something for them. We can sit around a conference table and we can figure out what we want to do for them, and then we go out and deliver these benefits, this largesse for the community.
We lost a number of the things that we had provided for the communities. We had built a hospital twice, which was burnt down during this conflict. We had built many schools in the communities which were destroyed during the conflict. So What was the point to providing all these facilities if it would end up being destroyed?
But the fact of the matter is that those things were never thought of being owned by the community from day one. They always thought it was owned by the person that did it, in this particular case, Chevron. So it was a Chevron hospital, it was a Chevron school, it was a Chevron facility.
I think in each of the cases, the companies, and what we're talking about is the company representatives, people, felt that they were doing what they needed to be doing and what they should be doing.
En realidad, la compañía, primero Magma y después BHP Billiton, pensaban que ellos estaban cumpliendo con sus obligaciones al mantener sus políticas de relaciones comunitarias, cumplir con el Estado peruano, ser celosos y cuidadosos cumplidores de la ley, pagar sus impuestos.
Nosotros como empresa privada ya sentíamos que estábamos manejando bien las cosas, pensábamos así.
These company executives will come to the communities. They will bring a pack of lunch and other things with small drinks. And they said they were coming for developmental projects. Or they said, okay, they will give you this.
But in each of the instances, there was a turning point for the company when they decided we have to look at things differently.
The Aboitiz group got financing for this purchase from the World Bank. But in the process, the claimants wrote telling them don't lend money to the Aboitices to purchase that power plant because of this. This hasn't been addressed.
In most instances, either violence or the threat of imminent violence did play a role, and it played the role of being a shock factor for the companies involved, either in terms of really posing a significant reputational risk or a financial risk in terms of stopping operations for the companies that made them take stock and really reevaluate what they were doing.
Reclamando, gente que iba hacia delante del tractor se tiraba para decir si quieren mátenme, pero a ustedes no van a construir esta planta.
Yo creo que en el caso de BHP Billiton, ellos estaban preocupados de que una mina chiquita para ellos le podía estar haciendo un daño grande a su prestigio. Entonces, ya, en un momento dado para ellos no era cuestión de costo, era cuestión de algo que había que arreglar.
I think that the crisis of 2003 was really a game changer for everyone. We had never seen anything so violent. We could not imagine that they could go to that extent. And in the time that we left the creeks, many of our facilities were destroyed.
They suffered major damage. And then when they came back for a re-entry plan, they saw the need to change the previous arrangement that they had. And that was how they came to come up with this new arrangement of the GMOU.
If we're going to go back to the Niger Delta, which we hoped we would, we have to do things differently. We have to find a way to make for peace. We can't just ignore the environment in which we're operating.
Well, for the communities, they're looking at this as a history of anywhere between 10 and 60 years. So this isn't an issue where they could turn on a dime. The distrust was there, the suspicion was there, an assumption that this may be the next trick that's being played on them, the next point at which they will be duped into agreeing to something that's not in their interests.
I told him, maybe you are just making a monkey business on us. I have said that word to him. Please do not emulate, do not follow what the NPC had been doing to us in the first time in the construction of the dam.
Siempre cuando se inicia un proceso no hay confianza. O sea, siempre hemos pensado que las mineras eran de que siempre nos iban a someter con todas sus leyes, con todos sus procesos. Eso era nuestra perspectiva.
En los primeros meses, como vuelvo a decirle, de que había conflicto, como puedo decir, todo era desconfianza, todos.
En las primeras reuniones parece que algo que sentíamos que estábamos engañados, ¿eh? No pensábamos de que va a salir este resultado, ¿no? porque las promesas podía ser, porque el país está labios para conversar, ¿no? Pero es fácil hablar, pero a los hechos, las promesas son un poco difíciles para cumplir.
Chevron has no longer been trusted again because there was distrust, there was deceit. Deceit leads to distrust or mistrust, and we were not now believing them again.
Most of them felt that, oh, Chevron has come again. That is, Chevron has come with another formula.
The opposition is because of the long-term suspicion we have with Chevron as a company. So when they came with this new phase or process, they said, they have come with another tricks again. So we're very, very suspicious, we're very skeptical.
A crucial tool in each of these examples is the role of a third-party mediator, an individual who is neutral, who is, as an individual, trusted by the different parties, which is distinct from whether they trust the other party, but who can enable both community and company to start a conversation. That individual plays a central role in enabling people to come to the table and put enough of their distrust on one side to start to talk.
When we came in, people were dealing with each other as enemies, as adversaries. And plus, there was some animosities, emotional animosities. So our role was basically to diffuse this and to put them in a frame of mind where they will talk and they will express themselves from the heart.
The mechanism that we provided allowed a process where all of them will be talking.
Y en la segunda reunión, acertadamente, alguien propuso contar con un facilitador profesional. Este fue el señor Antonio Bernales, que dio una gran contribución al proceso. Porque sin tomar partido con nadie, él tenía un poco más de visión, ¿no?
I think what saved the process was because we had someone who was neutral, who stood in between the communities and Chevron, and said, "Look, Chevron, no, you have to leave at that. Communities, no, let's tread the middle ground." And so we had someone that sort of played that role in the negotiation process, and that was Professor Ajibola, the chairman of New Nigeria Foundation. He came in at the nick of time and saved the process. But for him, I think the whole thing would have collapsed.
It changed when the next meeting was slated and Prof came himself. It changed. Prof came himself down to the meeting and made appeal to us that he was here to make things, he's not going to be partial, he's going to be impartial. So, but when Prof came, we found him to be a gentleman, a man of peace. He has a very peaceful disposition. And he was talking, into our spirits.
In many of these situations, there is a disparity between the parties in terms of the access to information and advice that they have, and sometimes to education.
First of all, we want to level the skills of negotiations. Secondly, in the process of capacity building, we want to put a face to each of the stakeholders, that it's not just a group of people that they're talking to. Now there are particular physical people in there, and they are getting to know them. And they're going to know them personally. They're going to call them by their first names.
Entonces, juntos decidimos buscar apoyo para que se les pudiera capacitar a las comunidades de cómo negociar, ¿no?, en un proceso de diálogo. Y cuando terminó esa capacitación, en realidad el proceso empezó a funcionar bastante más fluido.
But also playing a role of empowering everybody at the table in the skills to have that difficult conversation.
Creo que el desarrollo de capacidades es fundamental, porque efectivamente lo que hace es enriquecer las habilidades humanas y la disposición para el diálogo.
It's contrary to the business concept of negotiations, where you want to have an advantage over who you're negotiating with to get the best business deal. When in negotiations like this, you want everyone to be organized. It's never going to work unless everyone wins.
In none of the three examples is this a smooth, linear path. The community and companies are coming from a situation of distrust and a lot of historical issues that can mean that, for instance, communities need to go back and discuss with those they represent what is happening, to bring them along with them, and company representatives needing to do the same. So this is not a straight line progression, but overall you see a continuous building of a vested interest in what the dialogue is bringing to everybody in terms of the benefits.
En las comunidades nuestros comuneros nos decía de que no participen al diálogo, que el diálogo va a ser otro engaño, pero nosotros como cabeza que hemos estado, no teníamos que asumirlo con una... Nos hemos arriesgado de dialogarlo. Pensaba de que yo estaba buscando mis intereses. Hay personas que lanzaban una propuesta de que esto ya no quiero yo. Ahora, si ustedes, háganlo ustedes. Pero yo tenía que poner mano dura y presentarlo, aunque a unas actas así sin la voluntad de mi comunidad, he presentado a la empresa. Con esa acta hemos recuperado la reposición de tierras de mi comunidad.
Not every individual who has a stake in these processes ends up happy with the outcome.
I don't look it as a change. What I feel is that for a great kingdom like the Shekiri that has so much oil, and Chevron came to operate in their land, and we don't have one single director that represents our interests, it's not a fair ground. But whether good or bad, the people that produce the oil most should give them preference to enjoy what they have. That is my thinking.
These are not perfect happy endings either. They are midpoints in processes, very positive midpoints in processes. Points where everybody feels they have gained substantially from the dialogue, not just in terms of addressing the past grievances, but in terms of building a relationship that they can take forward. But there is no question there will be future problems that need to be addressed.
I think this is what is happening in Ambuklaw Binga. We had a good agreement, but it is not the end of it. There will be many mini agreements that they will have to make throughout the rest of their lives to make the community that they want to envision.
In all three of these instances, the dialogue that was built does not reach a full stop. It is actually the creation of a much longer term construct through which the company and the communities are able to continue their dialogue and continue to discuss new problems as and when they arise.
There's a continuous negotiation.
Continuing consultation.
Le hemos cambiado de nombre. Ahora se llama Mesa de Desarrollo.
Es un trabajo no continuo, permanente, ¿no?
Chevron did well by bringing us together to have that concept. And since we have had this concept, we now know that we can make life better for ourselves than it used to be.
The key that I think all of these three films convey is that even when you are in a position of intense conflict and distrust, it is worth thinking about, considering, reflecting upon, and talking about the possibility of entering into a dialogue. But recognizing that doing that directly is going to be at best challenging. Doing that with a neutral third party who can help you build a dialogue over time and build relationships is likely to be a more promising avenue.
It's always good to talk. It's always good to have a dialogue and listen to the sentiments of the people.
I have now the capacity to accept what was already done to us, indigenous. And also that company, they also understand what is the responsibility. They have now the capacity to build the relationship between us and them.
Para mí es una muy buena, si eso pensaríamos mundialmente, creo que sale un resultado bueno, tanto para las afectadas y las empresas transnacionales también que entiendan, entran todos mundialmente, ¿no? Y este diálogo.
Conversar entre personas y tener las propuestas de ambos. La empresa va a tener una propuesta y las comunidades también pueden tener otra propuesta. En todo caso, ¿no? Llegarlo a consensuarlo y ponerlo en la mesa y debatirlo y llegar a solucionar problemas que pueda haber.
And one must be a little humble in the sense that we work for big multinationals, and we're all well read. We all believe that we are intellectuals. We all believe that we know quite a great deal of things, and therefore we know what's right for everyone. But we don't. And we only find this out when we listen, when we talk to other people, when we get involved in the communities where we operate.
The GMOU process has taught me that you need to relate with people. You need to talk to people for people to know your problems. It is only when people know your problem that they can solve them. It's not by saying no, 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 cannot. So GMOU process provided a forum for people to sit down and discuss issues. And that is one of the most important things I find beneficial in the GMOU process, because it has also empowered me. It has also, I've benefited from the GMOU process because I can now sit with people and discuss issues. I don't discuss people, but I discuss issues. And I discuss issues to give and to take, and not to be rigid.
We often think in theoretical terms about human rights as things you have or you don't have that are violated or are not violated. But at the root of human rights lies the concept of human dignity and respect. And mediation processes can be ones that build people's sense of personal dignity and their sense of being respected.
Itagi ko iyatakday ko, siyayaw ko sunsika mo apo, tepsi kami ang ikani biyag ko, siyus takajay si pangingkaanto. Salamat sunsikam siyus apo. That's the end of my song.
Thank you.